Hey, seventh graders, it's Mr. Sarley. Good evening, and welcome to your YouTube homework review. This week on our homework, we're going over something you learned in fifth grade, which was multiplying whole numbers by fractions and the other way around. And I'm going to be going over the way you probably learned it and also showing you why that way makes a lot of sense. So the first problem says 6 times 1/3. You were probably taught that to multiply a whole number by a fraction, it would make sense to first take the whole number and rewrite it as a fraction. So 6 is the same as 6 wholes. Then we multiply that by 1/3. And multiplying fractions is a simple procedure. You just multiply across 6 times 1, 1 times 3. And then if we think about it, 6/3, well, 3/3 is a whole. So 6/3 would be 2, or 2 wholes. And you could have also just thought to yourself, what's 6 divided by 3? So that's a fine procedure, and I honestly use that procedure sometimes. But think about what this means. 6 times 1/3, that means 6 repeats of 1/3. And if you look at B, that's exactly what I put. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, 6 times. That's the same as this problem. And so it's just kind of useful to think about what this means. And once you see it like this, it kind of makes sense. 1/3 and 1/3 and 1/3, that's going to be one whole, because 3/3 would make a whole. 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3 again would make another whole. So in total, we get the same answer of 2, or 2 wholes. All right, so next is 2/3 times 6. For that one again, if you wanted to do the procedure, it would be 2/3 times, let's make 6 wholes into a fraction. We multiply that across, we would get 12/3. And if you think about that, 12/3, well, 3/3 is a whole, 6/3 is 2 wholes, 9/3 is 3, 12/3 is the same as 4 wholes, and you could have also just done 12 divided by 3, which would give you an answer of 4. But again, if we take this and just think about it as 6 times 2/3, kind of use the commutative property and switch it, this is the same as this. 2/3 and 2/3 and 2/3 repeated 6 times. And we can kind of do what we did over here on this side too, which is kind of fun to do, because 2 and 2 and 2 would make 6/3. So that's 6/3, which is the same as 2 wholes. So this is 2 wholes. And then another 2/3, 2/3, and 2/3 would make 6/3 again, which is another 2 wholes, which in total would give us this same answer of 4. So this would be a more conceptual way to think about this. And I actually want to give you one other conceptual way. One way to think of 2/3 times 6 would be, what is 2/3 of 6? So imagine you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Imagine you had 6 mints, or 6 Altoids, and you wanted to figure out what 2/3 of it was. So kind of like think about this 6 as being the whole, and then if I try to break it up into thirds, I see that 1/3 would be the same as 2 mints, or 2 Altoids. And then 2/3 would be this, which we notice is the exact same as 4. So that's another conceptual way you could think about 2/3 times 6. It's 2/3 of 6. So lots of ways to think about it that take you beyond just doing this kind of simple procedure, so you actually understand what you're doing. All right, on to reviewing what we've done on previous homeworks. 3/4 plus 2/3. Remember that when we're adding fractions, the denominators need to be the same, otherwise we can't count up the pieces. So 4 and 3, those denominators, I just think what's their least common multiple? So 4, 8, 12. Ooh, 12 seems good. 3, 6, 9, 12. 12 is their least common multiple. So I can take 3/4 and rewrite it as 12ths by multiplying by 3. And I would change this fraction to 9/12. And then 2/3, to change that one into 12ths, I would multiply by 4, and I would get 8/12. So our new problem would become 9/12 plus 8/12. And now we can just add across. We would get 17/12. So that would be the final answer, but you could also rewrite it as 1 whole. And since 17 is 5 more than 12, that would be 1 and 5/12. Okay. Next, we have addition of two mixed numbers, 3 and 2/3 plus 4 and 1/3. And this one I'm just going to add in parts. 3 plus 4 is 7 wholes. 2/3 plus 1/3 is really easy. That's the same as 3/3 or 1 whole. And so 7 wholes, and then the one extra one we get from adding the fractions, this answer would be 8. Jumping down to G, G is the exact same as E, but instead we're subtracting. So I already know already that 3/4 is equivalent to 9/12, and that 2/3 is equivalent to 8/12. And if we subtract those, if we have 9 of something and take away 8, all we'd have left would be 1. So the answer is 1/12. The last one, H, we're multiplying, and if you think about this, this is like a positive fraction, and this is like a negative fraction, and same signs multiply to positive, different signs, I'm getting it, it's a negative. That works for fractions or any type of number, as long as they're either negative or positive. So I know that my answer is going to be negative because these signs are different. Then 6 times 12 for the numerator, 6 times 2 would be 12, and 7 times 3 would be 21, and so your answer would be negative 12/21. Alright, on to the biggest topic in middle school math, ratios. Abdu scores 4 points every 8 minutes. For every is ratio language. That's 4 points for every 8 minutes. At this rate, how many points will he score after 40 minutes? Again, one of the most essential strategies for ratios is double number line because you can scale up the ratio that they give you. I set it up to have points on top and minutes on the bottom. And then just thinking about what ratios are and how to scale them, every 8 minutes, Abdu's scoring 4 points. So another 8 minutes would give us 16 in total. Which would also be another 4 points, which would be 8. Another 8 minutes, another 4 points, and so on. We would scale this up until we get to what we want, which is 40 minutes, and that tells us that Abdu has scored 20 points. But again, you could understand ratios in so many different ways, and this was only one way you could have solved it. You could have set up a ratio table, put in that first ratio, 4 points every 8 minutes, and then scaled it up by multiplying. We know we want to figure out 40 minutes. Fortunately, 8 is a factor of 40. You can multiply it by 5. And so we can just scale up this ratio to get an equivalent one, which is 20 points in 40 minutes, which is the same as what we got over here. Finally, I bet some of you noticed that each ratio, you can just kind of multiply the points by 2. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 12 times 2 is 24. So that would have allowed you to find the answer in kind of a different way. At this rate, how many points will he score in 2 minutes? All right, this is kind of a fun question because we have to break it down, this initial ratio of 4 points in 8 minutes. And you could break it in half if you wanted to. So half of this ratio would be 2 points in 4 minutes, but be careful, we want 2 minutes, not 2 points. So we break down the ratio again, and we figure out that every 2 minutes, Abdu scores 1 point. So the answer would be 1 point. And again, a double number line is cool because it lets you see visually how to break things down. So that same math that we just did, we could take the 4 to 8 ratio and break it down to 2 points every 4 minutes, and then break it down even more, because half of that would be 1 point every 2 minutes, which is what we wanted to figure out. Finally, you could have simplified this right off just by dividing the initial ratio by 4, and it would get us to this final ratio of 1 point every 2 minutes. All right, write an equation relating the number of points to the number of minutes. Remember, ratios are always proportional relationships. They're the same thing. So this relationship between points and minutes is going to be constant. There's going to be a constant number that you can multiply one of those variables by to get the other. And I was pointing it out earlier. You can multiply the points each time by 2 to get the minutes. So I can multiply the points times 2 to get the minutes. So now let's just write this algebraically, which would mean we have to use a variable to represent the unknown. So points times 2 equals the number of minutes. That would be fine. You could have also written it as 2p equals minutes. And it's also possible to take the number of minutes, multiply it by 1/2, and that would equal the points. That one's trickier, but I just wanted to show it to you just in case it makes sense. All right, so for the secret word today, on Friday or maybe Thursday, I was teaching, and then Xavier from 704 gets really excited. He raises his hand. I think he's going to come show me like a cool math thing he discovered, but instead he just circles my 3 negative chips. And he says, "Oh, that looks like a robber," and he's laughing uncontrollably. So then one of us said, "It kind of looks like some sort of ninja," and so our secret word today is going to be chip ninja. Thank you, Xavier.